Welcome to the deep dive. We're here to unpack complex topics, really distill them into the essential knowledge you need. Today, we are taking a deep dive into, well, a really tragic event, one that sent shockwaves globally just recently. Our mission today is to look at the facts, the initial reports, and the broader context surrounding the Air India Flight 171 crash. We want to help you understand what we actually know so far, what's being done right now, and, well, what might come next. It's obviously a very tragic story, but it forces us to look at critical vulnerabilities, especially in those very early takeoff phases, and also the incredibly complex sort of multinational investigation process that follows. It ensures lessons learned impact future safety, really, across the globe. Okay, so let's try to unpack this. A devastating event. June 12th, 2025, Air India Flight 171.
Yeah, it's a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner. It's supposed to be flying from Ahmedabad to London Gatwick.
But it never made it.
No. What's really harrowing, I think, is the immediate impact and, frankly, the location. The plane crashed very shortly after takeoff, right from Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel International Airport. And it came down in the BJ Medical College Hostel. That's in the Megani Nagar neighborhood.
Wow, a student hostel.
Exactly. Just highlights the scale of it, hitting a place of, everyday life. We're talking 241 people on board, plus over 38 people on the ground killed. There was only one survivor from the aircraft.
Just one. The human toll is almost hard to comprehend.
It really is.
And you said shortly after takeoff. How short? The timing seems critical here.
Incredibly short. It happened around 1:38 p.m. Indian Standard Time on June 12th. We're talking mere seconds after the wheels left the ground.
Seconds. Does that immediate, really rapid nature of it, does that help narrow down potential causes or maybe complicate things?
Well, both, in a way. It certainly presents unique challenges. The time for the crew to react is almost non-existent, so the focus immediately zooms in on those critical moments right after liftoff. What happened right then?
Okay. So when a disaster like this happens, there's initial chaos, but then the investigation machine kicks in almost instantly. Where do they even start? How do you piece this together?
Right, and understanding that methodical process is, I think, really important for grasping aviation safety. So absolutely critical are the flight recorders, the flight data recorder and the cockpit voice recorder. People often call them the black boxes.
Those black boxes, right.
And they were successfully recovered, which is obviously very good news for the investigation. These aren't just simple tape recorders, The flight data recorder captures hundreds of parameters every second.
Hundreds? Like what?
Oh, everything. Engine thrust levels, airspeed, altitude, flight control positions like the yoke, the rudder pedals, plus all the sounds and conversations in the cockpit from the voice recorder.
Okay, so incredibly detailed data.
Extremely rich, precise data. And it's now undergoing this really intensive forensic analysis. India is getting assistance from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, the NTSB, the UK's AAI, and also from Boeing itself.
Boeing is involved too.
Yeah, and this level of global collaboration is actually pretty standard for major crashes. It ensures you have the absolute deepest technical expertise available.
That makes sense. But, you mentioned Boeing's involvement. Does having the manufacturer investigate its own plane ever raise questions about impartiality? Or is that just how it works?
That's a fair question. It is standard practice, mainly because their specific detailed knowledge of that aircraft type is unparalleled. Nobody knows the 787 better than Boeing. However, this is key, the investigations are always led by independent government bodies. In this case, India's DGCA.
DGCA.
The Director General of Civil Aviation.
Huh.
They're in charge. Boeing provides technical data, analysis, expertise, but they don't lead the inquiry or decide the final cause. There's oversight.
Got it. Okay, so the black boxes are obviously vital, but the investigation must go way beyond just those recordings, right? What else are they looking at?
Oh, absolutely. It's much broader. The DGCA, the Indian regulator, they've already formally requested Air India's training records for the specific pilots and the dispatcher involved in this flight.
Training records, okay.
Yep. And at the same time, something broader is happening. Fleet-wide inspections of other Boeing 787s have started.
Fleet-wide, so not just Air India's planes.
Potentially wider, yes. It signals they're taking a really comprehensive look at the aircraft type itself, not just the one specific airframe that crashed.
And what about initial theories? I know it's early, but are people talking about specific possibilities, even if they're totally unconfirmed?
Yes. Inevitably, some early theories start circulating. You hear talk about engine-related
And
issues.
what kind of engine issues?
Well, things like thrust problems, which could mean, one of both engines not producing enough power, especially critical during takeoff,
Yep.
or even the possibility of a dual engine failure, which
Yeah.
is extremely rare, thankfully, but catastrophic when it happens low down.
Right near the ground. Yeah.
Exactly. And another area mentioned is potential flap complications.
Mhm.
The flaps are those parts on the wings that extend to give more lift at low speed. If they don't work correctly on takeoff, that's a serious problem.
Okay, so engine power or the wing configuration.
Those are some possibilities being discussed,
Hmm.
but, and I have to stress this, these are completely unconfirmed at this stage, just speculation based on the flight phase.
Sure, sure. Need the data.
Precisely. These investigations are incredibly meticulous. They take time. India has set up a high-level government committee to oversee it all. They're expecting a preliminary report maybe within weeks, but it could be up to 3 months.
Weeks to 3 months for just the preliminary report. That seems like quite a range. What
It,
goes into that and what's preliminary about it?
yeah, it reflects the complexity. A preliminary report usually just aims to establish the basic known facts, what happened, where, when, maybe identify any immediate safety issues that require urgent action. It often doesn't state a definitive cause yet. That requires much more analysis. Getting even that preliminary report out requires initial analysis of the black boxes, collecting witness statements, doing the initial forensic work at the crash site.
Okay.
It's a huge job.
Right. And the full report comes much later.
Oh, yes. The comprehensive report, the one that details the probable cause and contributing factors after cross-referencing everything, maybe running simulations, that can easily take a year, sometimes
A
longer.
year or more. Okay. Now, when something this catastrophic happens, like the Air India crash, you inevitably start to wonder, is this an isolated tragedy or does it point to something bigger? And while we know air travel is incredibly safe statistically, another incident happened just days later, didn't it? A very different kind, but still aviation.
That's right. If we sort of zoom out to the bigger picture, it is important to note that just a few days after the Air India crash, on June 15, 2025, there was another accident.
Oh.
This one involved a helicopter operated by Ariane Aviation. It was carrying pilgrims to Kedarnath, up in the mountains in Uttarakhand.
A pilgrimage flight.
Yes. And sadly, it crashed near Garakund. All 8 passengers died, including children, and unfortunately, one person on the ground was also killed.
Oh, terrible.
It is. And while it's a vastly different type of aircraft, different operation, likely very different causes, having these two events so close together does serve as a stark reminder. It underscores that vigilance in air safety isn't just about the big international jets. It
Yeah.
applies across the board: helicopters, smaller planes, every segment.
Right. Different challenges, but the same need for rigorous safety.
Exactly. It really shows the multifaceted nature of keeping air travel safe. Constant attention is needed everywhere.
So, bring it back to Air India 171 specifically. What does this all mean going forward? What are the really critical next steps we should be watching for?
Well, the analysis of those black boxes remains absolutely central. That data, especially on engine performance and, crucially, the cockpit voice recording, the conversations leading up to the event, that will be key.
That cockpit recording must be incredibly difficult to listen to, but vital.
Vital, yes. You can expect information to come out in phases. We'll likely see some initial findings emerge, perhaps in those preliminary reports we talked about, maybe in the coming weeks or months. But a full, really comprehensive report outlining the cause, that might not be until, say, mid-September 2025, possibly even later than that.
Okay, so patience is needed for the full picture. Beyond the black boxes, what other areas are going to be under intense scrutiny? Things that could lead to broader changes.
Definitely. The investigation will keep digging into those pilot and dispatcher training records we mentioned earlier. They'll also pore over the detailed aircraft maintenance logs for this specific 787. Was there anything in its history?
Right.
And there will be a thorough review of the regulatory protocols that govern Air India's operations. Are the rules adequate? Were they followed? And of course, Air India itself is under significant pressure now. They'll need to overhaul safety procedures, likely, and demonstrate convincingly that their entire 787 fleet is fully airworthy.
So it's not just about finding blame for this one crash.
Not at all. It's really about identifying any systemic weaknesses, any gaps in training, maintenance, oversight, or even aircraft design to prevent something similar from ever happening again. That's the ultimate goal.
This whole deep dive into the Air India Flight 171 crash and the context around it, it really gives you a sense, doesn't it? The huge complexity, the awful human tragedy, but also the incredible, relentless dedication that's required behind the scenes to keep air travel as safe as it generally is for millions of people every day.
It really does. And maybe this makes you consider, how does understanding this rigorous, multi-layered investigation process change your perspective? Thinking about everything from the forensic analysis of black boxes to those fleet-wide inspections, the international reviews, does it change how you view the extraordinary, often unseen efforts that make flying the safest mode of transport? It's worth considering how that intense scrutiny doesn't just find causes for these thankfully rare events, but how it fundamentally shapes and improves global aviation safety protocols for everyone, constantly pushing to protect every single passenger.